For more than 40 years, a radio transmitter has occupied the same frequency, broadcasting a mechanical buzz into the darkness. Then, without warning, the buzzing stops, and a human voice reads names and numbers meant for someone who never answers. By the end, you'll know what listeners call this station, what its strangest messages contained, and why the most convincing explanation is more unsettling than the wildest conspiracy, because the signal may not be speaking to people at all. Turn an ordinary radio to 4,625 kHz, inside the shortwave band, and you may hear it. A flat, repetitive tone. Roughly 25 pulses per minute. Hour after hour. Day after day. It resembles a ship's horn trapped behind a wall, or an alarm sounding in a building everyone abandoned decades ago. Listeners know it as UVB-76, although that name came from an early call sign and may never have been official. Others simply call it the buzzer. Its precise beginnings are uncertain. Monitoring records place versions of the signal in the late Soviet period, with the familiar buzzing format emerging around the closing years of the Cold War. The Soviet Union disappeared in 1991. Flags changed. Borders moved. Armies fractured. The buzzer continued. Most of the time, it transmits no obvious information. Just the sound, occupying the frequency like a sentry pacing an empty corridor. But on rare occasions, the tone breaks. A voice enters. Usually Russian. Usually calm. It may recite a call sign, a sequence of digits, and one or more apparently unrelated words. Names. Objects. Fragments such as agronomist, lifeboat, or fence specialist. Then the voice ends, and the buzzing returns. No explanation follows. No public agency signs its name. No schedule identifies the intended audience. And somewhere, someone may be writing every symbol down. The messages sound absurd until you examine their structure. A typical transmission begins with repeated identifiers. That is followed by number groups, then coded words pronounced carefully enough to survive static and interference. The format resembles military radio procedure: identify the recipient, authenticate the traffic, deliver the payload, leave the channel. The strange words are probably not sentences. They may be code groups chosen because each sounds distinct over a weak connection. A recipient holding the correct instructions could convert them into an order, a location, a status report, or nothing at all, if the message was never intended for that recipient. You are hearing the locked box, not the key. In ordinary cryptography, intercepted material can sometimes be attacked by studying patterns. But if these broadcasts use one-time pads correctly, the code can be mathematically unbreakable. Every message is combined with a unique random key, used once, then destroyed. To you, 7825, commanding. 93, 18 inches meaningless. To one operator with one sheet of paper, it could mean move a unit before dawn. That possibility gave rise to an international listening culture. Radio enthusiasts began recording the station, logging every interruption, comparing call signs, and tracking changes in the background noise. They turned bedrooms into monitoring posts. But here is the contradiction. A transmission designed to conceal information is being sent on a frequency anyone can hear. That is not a flaw. It may be the entire point. Shortwave radio does something modern networks struggle to imitate: it reaches enormous distances without requiring the receiver to reveal itself. No account. No cable. No satellite subscription. No return connection. A person can sit hundreds or thousands of kilometers away, extend an antenna, and listen without transmitting a single detectable response. The sender never needs to know precisely where the receiver is. That makes shortwave crude, and remarkably resilient. Telephone lines can be cut. Internet traffic can be traced. Satellites can be disrupted. Local infrastructure can collapse during war. But a powerful transmitter and a cheap receiver can keep communicating through chaos. Number stations exploited that advantage throughout the Cold War. Some played melodies before coded traffic. Some used synthetic voices. Some transmitted in English, German, Spanish, Russian, or languages that gave no reliable clue to their origin. Governments rarely acknowledged them. Yet declassified espionage cases showed that agents really did receive coded instructions by radio. The mythology grew from documented tradecraft, not imagination. UVB-76, however, behaves differently. Classic number stations appear at scheduled times, transmit a message, and disappear. The buzzer occupies its channel almost continuously. It does not merely deliver traffic. It holds territory. One theory says the buzz is a channel marker, warning other users that the frequency is reserved. When a command must be sent, an operator interrupts the marker, speaks, and withdraws. Simple. Practical. Almost boring. But before we get to what the station may actually be guarding, you need to understand something even stranger. Listeners have heard the room behind the signal. At times, the broadcast has carried sounds that should not exist inside a clean automated signal. Muffled voices. Movement. A door opening. Something striking nearby equipment. Brief fragments suggesting that a live microphone was feeding the transmitter while the famous buzz sounded through the room itself. That detail matters. If the buzzing were generated electronically at the transmitter, background noises would not normally ride beneath it. But if a physical sound source played near an open microphone, everything in that room could leak onto the frequency. Imagine a radio left broadcasting in a restricted building. A speaker produces the repetitive tone. A microphone listens continuously. When personnel need the channel, they silence the speaker and read a message into the same microphone. Low technology, but difficult to interrupt remotely and easy to operate under emergency conditions. Listeners use these accidental noises as forensic evidence. Changes in hum, echo, and signal strength suggested equipment adjustments and possible relocations. Direction-finding enthusiasts traced earlier transmissions toward a military communications area west of Moscow. Later observations indicated activity from more than one location. Then, in 2010, the station entered a period of unusual disruption. The buzzing stopped and restarted. New call signs appeared. Voice traffic increased. Monitoring communities reported what sounded like technical activity and relocation. Explorers later entered an abandoned military site associated by enthusiasts with the older transmission area. They photographed ruined rooms, cables, paperwork, and discarded equipment. Compelling, but not a signed confession. The trail pointed toward the Russian military communications system. Yet no definitive public statement arrived saying, "This station is ours. This is its mission. These are its recipients." The institution remained silent, while its transmitter kept speaking. Silence creates space, and people fill space with stories. The darkest story claims the buzzer is connected to a nuclear retaliation system. According to the popular version, if the signal ever stops, automated weapons will assume Russia's command structure has been destroyed, and launch. It is a perfect legend, one monotonous sound holding back the end of the world. It is also poorly supported. Russia did develop a Cold War-era retaliatory command system known in the West as Dead Hand. Its purpose was to preserve the ability to authorize a nuclear response after a devastating first strike. But available accounts describe sensors, command rockets, hardened communications, and human authorization procedures, not a public shortwave buzzer functioning as a global deadman switch. More importantly, UVB-76 has stopped before. The tone has vanished during maintenance, interference, technical failures, and periods of transition. Civilization did not end. Another theory says the signal measures changes in the ionosphere. Another claims it transmits to submarines. Some suggest spies. Others imagine coded orders to sleeper agents or an experiment whose operators died long ago. These ideas confuse possibility with evidence. Shortwave cannot effectively reach deeply submerged submarines. Navies use very low or extremely low frequencies for that problem. Scientific beacons generally transmit identifiable measurement patterns. And a forgotten machine does not produce changing call signs and fresh voice messages across decades. So strip away the romance. The station is maintained. Its procedures evolve. People intervene. Messages are deliberately composed. Whatever UVB-76 is, it is still operational because someone still needs it. Here is the main reveal. The best supported explanation is that the buzzer is not primarily a spy station, a scientific instrument, or a switch attached to nuclear weapons. It is likely part of a Russian military command network, a persistent high-frequency channel used to alert units and distribute coded orders across a wide territory. The buzz keeps the frequency occupied and tells receivers that the network is alive. The spoken sequences are addressed traffic. Changes in call signs may reflect reorganized networks, new recipients, exercises, or shifts in command. And that explains the feature everyone misunderstands. The constant noise may contain no secret message at all. The noise is the status light. Its repetition tells distant operators that the transmitter is functioning, the channel remains assigned, and someone is still at the other end. When a real instruction arrives, the meaningless marker stops, and meaning briefly passes through. This is more disturbing than the doomsday myth because it makes the station ordinary military infrastructure. Not an artifact accidentally surviving the Cold War, but a system adapted for the world after it. During periods of political tension and military activity, monitors have sometimes recorded bursts of increased voice traffic. That does not allow outsiders to decode operational meaning, and apparent correlations must be treated carefully. Listeners naturally notice patterns after major events. But the broader fact remains. An archaic communications method still offers strategic value precisely because modern war attacks modern systems. A shortwave network can outlive damaged towers, severed fiber, compromised software, and disrupted satellites. The buzzer sounds old because survival often does. Now imagine the station from the other side. You are awake after midnight with headphones pressed against your ears. The buzz has continued so long that your mind begins filtering it out. Static rises and falls like weather. Then the tone stops. A voice gives an identifier. Numbers follow. A peculiar word is repeated. You record it, compare it with other listeners, and wait for an event that might explain what you heard. Nothing happens. Or something happens, but you can never prove the connection. That uncertainty is why UVB-76 survives as both military signal and cultural ghost story. Thousands of people can monitor it, archive it, and analyze it, yet its operational purpose remains sealed by the simplest barrier imaginable: nobody with the key is talking. The public hears every transmission and understands almost none of it. There is a lesson buried inside that paradox. Secrecy does not always require silence. Sometimes the safest place to conceal a message is in the open, repeated across the sky, surrounded by enough mystery that truth becomes indistinguishable from rumor. The station's identity is not completely unknowable. Technical behavior, transmission sites, language, formats, and historical context strongly suggest a military network. What remains unknown is more precise, and more important. Who receives each message? What actions follow? And how many people are still required to keep listening? So the mystery is not that a Soviet ghost has been buzzing without purpose for 40 years. The mystery is that the purpose likely never disappeared. UVB-76 appears to be a living fragment of Cold War communications doctrine, maintained, altered, and carried into an age of cyber warfare and satellites because simple radio still works when complicated systems fail. No ministry publicly places its name beside the signal. No official handbook explains it for curious listeners. But every interruption is evidence of human intention. The frequency is occupied. The network is watched. And the next coded voice is not speaking to the world, even though the entire world can hear it. Somewhere beyond the static, a receiver has a matching procedure, a waiting operator, and perhaps a sealed page that turns nonsense into an order. You will probably never know what that order says. That is the station's real achievement. Not that it remains hidden, but that it has been broadcasting in plain sight for decades, and still keeps its meaning secret. If this broke your brain a little, subscribe. We drop one of these every week. Because the next forgotten case begins with a final transmission from a team vanishing into the wilderness. The expedition sent one last message: it is not what we thought. Then silence.